First time since the start of the war, the Israeli Air Force targeted Houthi-controlled Yemen. The Israeli retaliation followed the drone strike in Tel Aviv that killed one man and wounded several others. The Houthis fired a missile toward Eilat today, but it was shot down, and more Houthi attempts are expected. ILTV's Steve Leibovitz has the full story.
In one of its most distant and daring operations ever carried out by the Air Force, Israeli F-35 fighter jets made the 1,800-kilometer flight and pounded the Houthi rebels' port of Hodeidah. The port is a crucial point of entry for goods entering the Houthi controls areas of northern Yemen. Houthi spokesman vowed that the rebels would continue targeting Israel as long as the war continues in Gaza, even as the port continued to burn.
תקפנו את מרחב הנמל בשל היותו נתיב אספקה להעברת אמצעי הלחימה האיראנים מאיראן לתימן, והוא מהווה מקור כלכלי משמעותי לטרור החותי. במרחב הנמל תקפנו תשתיות דו-שימושיות לטרור, ביניהם גם תשתיות אנרגיה.
According to local authorities, 3 people were killed and 87 wounded in the airstrikes that targeted oil facilities and a power station in Hodeidah. A fuel depot and other facilities were seen burning for hours after the Israeli airstrikes that came after the Houthis fired some 200 missiles and drones toward Israel since the start of the war in Gaza in early October.
הנמל שתקפנו איננו נמל תמים. הוא שימש למטרות צבאיות, הוא שימש כנקודת כניסה לנשק קטלני שסופק לחות'ים על ידי איראן. והם השתמשו בנשק הזה כדי לתקוף את ישראל, לתקוף את מדינות האזור, לתקוף נתיב שייט בינלאומי, נתיב שייט מהחשובים בעולם.
The Israeli retaliation came the day after a Yemenite drone infiltrated Tel Aviv and exploded on a building near the U.S. Embassy Annex, killing one man, 50-year-old Yevgeny Ferder, and wounding several others. This morning, the Houthis fired a drone toward Eilat, but it was shot down by Arrow missile air defense outside Israeli airspace.
את האש שבוערת עכשיו בחודיידה רואים בכל רחבי המזרח התיכון, ולעניין הזה יש משמעויות ברורות. החות'ים תקפו אותנו למעלה מ-200 פעם. בפעם הראשונה שבה הם פגעו באזרח ישראלי, הכינו אותם, ואנחנו נעשה את זה בכל מקום שבו הדבר הזה יידרש. לדם של אזרחים ישראלים יש מחיר, הוא לא הפקר. את זה יודעים היום, גם בלבנון, גם בעזה, גם בתימן, וגם במקומות אחרים. אם יעיזו לתקוף אותנו, התוצאה תהיה זהה.
And joining us now with more on Israel's strike on Houthi targets in Yemen following the deadly attack on Tel Aviv is F-16 fighter pilot and former head of Israeli Air Force Intelligence, Brigadier General in the Reserves, Ram Shmueli. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
So Israel conducted a surprise attack on Houthi targets in Yemen. Can you give us perhaps some insight into what goes into planning and carrying out an operation of this scope?
First of all, you have to train to such a mission for many years. So we trained it for many years to strike far away from Israeli border in those distance. And as a result, when there was the order and there was the mission detected by the government, it took us 24 hours to go and done the job. So this is not something that you can start planning just on the spot. You have to train many, many years. Secondly, you have to use many airplanes. It is not a surgical mission that you can do only on one target or 2 targets. It is something that all the Israeli Air Force, F-15, F-35, F-16 can do it. So it's real far away from Israel, but we are well trained. And when the mission got down to the command chain, we start planning it for the last 24 hours.
Mm-hmm. You know, Israel is now clearly engaged in a multi-front war, you know, in Gaza, with Hezbollah in Lebanon, and now with the Houthis in Yemen. Can Israel's Air Force handle such a multi-front, you know, a regional confrontation like this? Should it come to that?
It's much different when you attack in Gaza or in Lebanon than you doing far distance attacks like this. So we have to set the equation that if you hit and hurt the Israeli civilians, we are going to retaliate. And when you retaliate, it is not by one or two missiles or one or two drones. We retaliate very tough and decisive. So in that regard of your question, yes, we can handle multi fronts. Nevertheless, it is far away from Israel. So when we strike so far, we have to be very decisive.
We have to be decisive, and essentially this was sending a message not only to the Houthis, but to the Islamic Republic of Iran. Do you think this message was received in the Middle East?
I think it is not only in the Middle East. It is also in the world. There is a war. We don't have anything with the Houthis. They are fighting and missile, and they are catching international ship and shipping course all over the last 6 months. This is a mission for international task force. This is a mission for the world. It is not for Israel to fight the Houthis. Nevertheless, if they fight Israel, we are going to retaliate. So I think the Middle East show set on the veranda and saw what's happened in Yemen and understood both in Tehran, both in Lebanon, and maybe other places that we are not going to give up on attack on the Israeli civilians.
So a clear and decisive message not only to the Houthis, but to the world. Brigadier General in the Reserves, Ram Shmueli, thank you so much for your analysis today.
Thank you.
And following the deadly Houthi attack on Tel Aviv, ILTV correspondent Ariella Lechiani was in Tel Aviv today, asking residents about their reactions to the attack. Let's take a look.
It's kind of surreal, you know, it's a little close to home. It's not okay.
I think this is it's very standard for Israel. You know, I think after everything we've been through the last 9 or 10 months, I think that, you know, it's not surprising that something like this would happen. But, you know, as with everything else, we will persevere.
I thought it was a gas leak explosion. I was quite sure. Or maybe something criminal. I really didn't think it's something that has to do with the war. I really didn't. And I wasn't surprised, but I just didn't think about it. And next day, when I heard that it was a missile, it's never nice when people hate you, you know? It's never nice when people attack you. But
I do feel safe. I don't think it really makes a difference in my life at the moment. If things start to get worse up north, I feel like maybe there would be some degree of concern.
are in war, you know, so you can't really feel safe when the country is in war.
Of course I feel safe. This is home. This is the only place I want to be in. I'm not leaving, not for anything.
And now, day 289 of the war in Gaza, and there was intense fighting in Rafah. Meanwhile, in the north, heavy cross-border exchanges continue with Hezbollah. ILTV's Steve Leibovitz reports.
There were intense bombardments along the Lebanese border as Israel and Hezbollah continued the deadly tit-for-tat exchanges. One soldier was moderately wounded and a second was lightly hurt in a Hezbollah drone strike near a kibbutz in the Upper Galilee. Some 120 projectiles targeted Israel over the weekend, with most downed by air defense or fell in empty areas. Firefighting teams were called in to extinguish blazes caused by the incoming rockets. The IDF said fighter jets attacked rocket launchers in South Lebanon's Deir Siryan, used by Hezbollah in the attacks earlier in the day. Another Hezbollah rocket launcher was hit in Aitarun. In Gaza, many Hamas terrorists were reported killed in clashes with the IDF around Rafah. A soldier was seriously injured in the close-quarter fighting. Prime Minister Netanyahu met troops in Rafah and spoke of the importance of holding the area.
התחזקתי בהבנה שההחזקה שלנו בציר פילדלפי ובמעבר רפיח הם חיוניים להמשך. במקביל, הלחץ הצבאי שהם מפעילים, כאן, ממש, בגרון של החמאס, עוזר לנו. יחד עם העמידה האיתנה על דרישותינו הצודקות, עוזר לנו לקדם את עסקת החטופים. לרבות הדרישה שלנו לשחרר מספר מקסימלי של חטופים וחטופות כבר בשלב הראשון של המתווה. הלחץ הכפול הזה לא מעכב את העסקה, הוא מקדם אותה.
Meanwhile, in an effort to fill manpower shortages, the IDF today sent out draft notices to some 1,000 ultra-Orthodox Jews with deferments. It's the start of a controversial effort opposed by ultra-Orthodox political parties that would draft some 4,000 ultra-Orthodox Jews. It's unclear how many will report. Continuing opposition and protests are expected.
And Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is set to meet President Joe Biden in Washington and address a joint session of Congress this week. Their discussions are assumed to focus on finalizing a ceasefire agreement and securing the release of hostages amid ongoing negotiations. ILTV's editor-in-chief Maayan Hoffman has the story.
Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is set to travel to Washington this week to meet with President Joe Biden on Monday and address a joint session on the U.S. Congress on Wednesday, July 24. According to Washington, the meeting between the two world leaders will focus on securing the ceasefire and hostage deal. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken said in an interview at the Aspen Security Forum over the weekend that the ceasefire negotiations are nearing completion.
I believe we're inside the 10-yard line and driving toward the goal line and getting an agreement that would produce a ceasefire, get the hostages home, and put us on a better track to trying to build lasting peace and stability.
At the forum, American National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan elaborated on the deal's details, noting that the initial phase of the ceasefire agreement spans 6 weeks. President Biden explained that one of the terms of this framework allows for an extension of this phase, provided that the parties remain engaged with the mediators and continue making progress. This extension would last until an agreement is reached, at which point they could transition into Phase 2. Meanwhile, family members and supporters of Israeli hostages took to the streets Saturday night, calling on Netanyahu to announce a deal to free the hostages even before he flies to the United States.
Netanyahu, stop sabotaging the deal. The hostages are out of time. Now your duty is to secure the deal.
Sullivan said the White House has not yet seen a copy of Netanyahu's speech to Congress. Netanyahu last visited Washington in September 2020 when he participated in the Abraham Accords signing ceremony on the White House South Lawn alongside Donald Trump. He last addressed Congress in 2015 when he pressed legislators to vote against the Iranian nuclear deal. Netanyahu has been waiting for an invitation to the White House for more than 18 months. Biden withheld that invitation, likely to signal his displeasure over some of Netanyahu's policies. However, since the October 7th massacre, America has offered critical support to the country. Officials near Netanyahu told ILTV last week that the prime minister has asked for a meeting with Donald Trump. However, it is still unclear if this meeting will take place. Since congratulating Biden on his 2020 victory, Netanyahu has faced criticism from Trump. If Trump avoids Netanyahu, it will be seen as a deliberate snub. Conversely, if he meets with Netanyahu, it signals reconciliation. Either way, Netanyahu will struggle to manage the optics of the encounter. Finally, Netanyahu will likely use the Congress floor to remind Americans that Israel's fight against Hamas is a front line in the global fight for civilization. A crucial message as Israel becomes an increasingly partisan issue.
And joining us now with more on Prime Minister Netanyahu's visit to the United States this week is former Israeli ambassador and congressional affairs liaison at the Israeli embassy in D.C., Yoram Ettinger. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
So the Prime Minister is flying to Washington, where he'll address Congress and have the long-awaited meeting with President Biden. What is the main purpose of this visit? Why now?
I hope that the Prime Minister considers that visit and his delivery in front of both chambers of Congress as an opportunity, unique opportunity, to lay out the Israeli case in front of the American people and their representatives in the House and in the Senate, highlighting the fact that Israel fighting the Houthis, Hamas and Hezbollah is in fact also America's own war, Western democracy's own war against a mutual threat, the threat of Islamic terrorism, which is committed to bring the so-called infidel West to submission. And therefore, any pressure on Israel to lay down its arm and shift from fighting Hamas to negotiating with Hamas provides enemies of the US and Western democracies with an opportunity to bolster their capabilities, as was the case with all previous negotiation cycles with Hamas. If the US wants to rid itself of the wrath of Islamic terrorism, one of the steps is to obliterate Hamas and extend any assistance possible to Israel, which is in effect the first yard line of defense of Western democracies. And by the way, the same applies to the pressure on Israel to establish a Palestinian state on the mountains of Judea and Samaria.
So a very important message to Congress. And I want to also discuss Biden's meeting with Netanyahu. It's no secret that Netanyahu and Biden have had a rocky relationship. Add to this the reports from the U.S. that Biden may withdraw from the presidential race after the visit. So how do you think this meeting will play out? Do you think it will be an attempt to show a united front, a reconciliation perhaps? Or could Biden take this opportunity to perhaps deride the prime minister?
Well, it's an opportunity for the U.S. to reassess its policy towards Iran, towards Islamic terrorism, as well as towards Israel. And rather a confrontational policy, it should become a cooperative policy, joint effort policy in face of mutual threat. This is not an issue of personal relations. This is an issue of the Middle East reality versus alternate reality, an alternate reality developed by the State Department, which is at odds with Middle East reality, deluding itself that pandering, appeasing the Ayatollahs of Iran could somehow induce the Ayatollahs to become good faith negotiators, accept peaceful coexistence with the Arab Sunni neighbors of Iran, and abandon their 1,400-year-old fanatic vision of bringing the great American Satan to submission.
All right, well, Ambassador Yoram Ettingel, thank you so much for speaking with us today.
Thank you.
Since the Hamas attacks on October 7th, American Friends of Sheba Medical Center has stepped up in an extraordinary way. They've raised more than $35 million, ensuring the victims of the massacre and the soldiers who are fighting for Israel continue to receive life-saving treatments and rehabilitation. American Friends of Sheba has arranged for more than 150 volunteers to travel to Israel, providing critical support to the nation's largest and most comprehensive medical center. Be a part of the Sheba. Stand for health. Stand for Israel. Donate now.
And U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken warned over the weekend that Iran could develop nuclear power within 2 weeks, emphasizing the urgent need for international cooperation. He was speaking at the Aspen Security Forum. ILTV's Mayan Hoffman has more.
U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken warned that Iran could develop nuclear power within 2 weeks. At the Aspen Security Forum, he faced questions about America's strategy to prevent the rogue regime from acquiring a nuclear bomb.
Every time I've interviewed you as secretary, I have asked you the same question: is U.S. policy still that Iran must not be allowed to get a nuclear weapon?
It is.
Which is what you always answer. And then I always ask, so how are you going to stop them?
Well, by far, the preferable way to do it would be through diplomacy. Where we are now is not in a good place. Iran, because the nuclear agreement was thrown out, instead of being at least a year away from having the breakout capacity of producing fissile material for a nuclear weapon, is now probably 1 or 2 weeks away from doing that. Now, they haven't developed a weapon itself.
1 or 2 weeks.
1 or 2 weeks is probably what the realistic breakout time is. They haven't produced a weapon itself, but that's something, of course, that we track very, very carefully. And you put those two things together, the fissile material, an explosive device, and you have a nuclear weapon.
The U.S. is closely monitoring Iran's weaponization efforts and coordinating international responses through sanctions and alliances. He emphasized the importance of global cooperation, noting that America's current approach involves stronger collaboration with European and regional partners, something Blinken said the U.S. did not have a couple of years ago.
And providing billions in aid to the Islamic Republic certainly not a way to prevent them from reaching a nuclear bomb. And moving on, ahead of the opening of the Paris Olympic Games on Thursday, the International Olympic Committee says that it's dealing with death threats leveled against the Israeli athletes amid the war in Gaza. ILTV's Devo Klein reports.
The IOC has spoken to Israel's National Olympic Committee after a number of its athletes received death threats. The ongoing conflict between Israel and Gaza has heightened tensions in Paris ahead of the opening ceremony of the 2024 Olympic Games.
We have been in contact with the Israeli National Olympic Committee. We're actually in contact with all 206 every day. And threats happen to athletes on a regular basis. We do understand, obviously, the Israeli athletes are receiving more. There are a number of safeguarding practices that we put in place straight away, together with the NOC, to make sure that those are dealt with. But it is a common occurrence, and in some delegations, obviously, it's more than others.
The IOC made it clear there will be no toleration of disruption or violence, emphasizing that the Olympic Games are a place meant to bring people from around the world together.
We hope and we pray that we can create a culture of peace. That's what the Olympic Games can do. It can show that bringing people together to compete fiercely but still to live together peacefully in the village is something worth striving for. So we set an example. We hope to create a culture of peace.
And our final story tonight, the 41st Jerusalem Film Festival kicked off in grand style Thursday night, despite global hesitance about Israeli films in the shadow of the Hamas war. The 41st Jerusalem Film Festival kicked off the night with the much-anticipated screening of Thelma. The film drew a crowd of about 6,000 at the Sultan's Pool Amphitheater near the Old City Walls in Jerusalem. The festival, conceived and initiated by Israel Prize Laureate and founder of the Jerusalem Cinematheque, Leah Van Leer, is considered the leading and most important film festival in Israel. This year, events are taking place at a time when festival leaders say that both internal and external threats endanger the continuation of cinematic creation in Israel. A highlight of Thursday's event was an address by American Jewish actress Jennifer Jason Leigh, who received an award from the festival for her work. And events run through July 27th. Some 70,000 film and culture enthusiasts from Israel and around the world are expected to participate. And now let's take a look at the weather forecast. Mostly clear skies are expected tonight around the country, with temperatures reaching lows of around 25 degrees Celsius or 77 degrees Fahrenheit. Then tomorrow, mostly sunny skies and hot weather expected, as temperatures should be reaching highs of 35 degrees Celsius or 96 degrees Fahrenheit. And that's a wrap for today's news. For the latest updates from Israel on all your devices, be sure to follow our ILTV channel, subscribe to our newsletter, and explore our website, iltv.tv. Stay informed with the latest news straight from the heart of Israel. I'm Madar Gavelazi. Be well, stay safe, and thank you so much for watching.